We begin the day with the phone call that is being called an act of betrayal.
We had a great call.
Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective.
I think we know exactly what's going to happen. President Trump has effectively surrendered to Putin before the negotiations have even begun.
Welcome everyone to GBS Deep Dive. I'm Najma Minhas. Well. Trump has finally, almost, delivered on what he promised his MAGA supporters. That he would put an end to that useless war in Ukraine undertaken at the behest of the Biden administration and the CIA, which has killed hundreds of thousands of people and wasted hundreds of billions of dollars and unmasked the Western system for being that emperor who is wearing no clothes. It is also apparent that Putin has won the special military operation, as he calls it. He is stronger now in his country, having taken on and not been defeated by the whole Western system. 2025 in the history books will herald the end of the unipolarity and Pax Americana and the official rise of multipolarity again. In the words of the former advisor to the National Security Council under Biden's administration, Alexander Windman, who called it a complete capitulation. Trump's described his call with Putin this week as being a lengthy and highly productive phone call.
We had a great call, and it lasted for a long time, over an hour. This morning, I also had with President Zelensky a very good call after that.
And he's made it clear that the war is near the end. And he's meeting Putin very soon, apparently in Saudi Arabia. Maybe as soon as next week. I believe this effort will lead to a successful conclusion, hopefully soon, Trump wrote on Truth Social. Putin told the Russian Security Council on January the 20th that Russia was seeking a long-term peace based on respect for the legitimate interests of all people who live in the region. What's becoming apparent after listening to the different people in Trump administration is that Ukraine will remain a sovereign state, although it is clear that it will be a rump of a state. Russian forces currently control over 20% of Ukraine's territory, and there won't be much negotiation over how much, if any, territory they will return. Pete Hegseth said during his meeting at NATO that the US will not be putting troops on the ground, and that Ukraine may as well get used to the idea that it won't get back all the land it has lost since 2014. He referred to it as an unrealistic objective, and that NATO membership is also off the table.
We want, like you, a sovereign and prosperous Ukraine. But we must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective.
The United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement, Hegseth said at the NATO meeting. What's not so clear yet is the future of the $500 billion worth of mineral deposits that President Zelensky has tried sweetening Donald Trump with to continue supporting him in this war against Russia. Knowing Trump, he'll probably find a way to get those as well. Now, this is an utter disaster for the US objectives. When you use those objectives, when those are being defined by Joe Biden's administration. It was a framework in which Russia was still the Cold War enemy and did not accept the utter humiliation of its current position as a second-rate middling power. The US establishment will not be happy with Trump right now. They will try to sell the conclusion of this war as a defeat to put Trump under pressure. The Wall Street Journal, that often speaks the mindset of the US establishment, says in one headline, Putin gets what he has long wanted, direct talks with the United States. But what is transparent? The strategy for Donald Trump is very different and probably, potentially, smarter for American first interests. There is a reason why J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, said in his Wall Street Journal interview just before going to the Munich Security Conference that it's not in Putin's interest to be the little brother in a coalition with China. So how does China fit into this? I hope you will subscribe to the channel and press the bell to get notifications of the new videos when they come out. Do share with me your thoughts on other topics that you may be interested in me breaking down. Looking at this war or operation 3 years on, a war that was fought by the whole Western world against Russia has been a disaster in all respects. It not only exposed, but has exacerbated the Western decline in hegemony. It has left the transatlantic alliance weakened, with pressure on European countries whose economies have been weakened by higher energy prices, higher inflation, and having to spend more money on defense expenditure than they have done so in decades. Germany alone pledged to raise its defense spending to euro 100 billion. One of the major reasons why Germany's economy in particular has been destroyed has been the Ukraine-Russian war. Germany is now experiencing its third consecutive year of economic contraction, marking this the largest downturn in the nation's post-war history. The economy shrank by almost 0.3% in 2023, 0.2% in 2024, and this year is projected to decline by a further 0.5%. German energy prices jumped by over 35% during this period, hitting its industrial base. Over 55% of its natural gas came from Russia, and the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which was designed to transport natural gas from Russia to Germany through the Baltic Sea, which was completed in September 2021 at an estimated cost of $11 billion, was just blown up, with blame which was first thrown on Russia, later on the CIA, and then much later on the Ukrainians took responsibility. No one really believes that they were the only ones responsible, though. Eminent economist Jeffrey Sachs has described the pipeline's destruction as an act of international terrorism and attributed it to the Americans.
Nord Stream is a hunk of metal on the sea floor. Is that how you would talk about an act of international terrorism?
Ukraine, it's been utterly destroyed. Reportedly, over 500,000 people, soldiers and civilians, have been killed, and most numbers are being understated as Western sources refuse to report correct numbers, as that would be a magnitude sign of their defeat. By 2024, direct damage to Ukraine's infrastructure was estimated at over $160 billion. This includes damage to residential buildings, to schools, to hospitals, and other critical facilities. Approximately 250,000 residential buildings have been damaged or destroyed. Ukraine's energy infrastructure has been attacked, with an estimated 9 gigawatts of Ukraine's domestic power generation capacity destroyed. Most of the Russian-speaking areas of Ukraine are now under Russian control, and they look to stay that way even after the peace negotiations between the United States and Russia. Ukrainians were led down the garden path by the Americans, the Europeans, and Zelensky. A big hoo-ha that was made of the Russian sanctions did not in fact bring the country to its knees. They only weakened the credibility and trust in the Western financial system by the Global South, both in the dollar and in the SWIFT system. The Global South saw clearly that the system was being weaponized to attack selectively those countries that the West sees as being antithetical to its own interests. Now, during this period, Israel was conducting a genocide of the Palestinians, and absolutely nothing practically was done to halt this. In general, the sanctions became empty threats and were not successful in curtailing Russia's actions. And it was this weaponization of this system that has led to the increased geopolitical importance of the BRICS alliance and under Russian and Chinese leadership, and the talk of a BRICS currency and the M-bridge system as a counter to the SWIFT system. Now, coming to the United States, why is Trump not seeing this as a defeat? Well, President Trump sees wasting more time to win this war against Russia as one of being a Pyrrhic victory. Now, a Pyrrhic victory is one where you can say you win the battle, but you lose the war. So you win, but the cost of doing so would make it really not worth it. Trump has repeatedly stated that the Russia-Ukrainian war would never have started had he been in office. And he's probably right, not because he's a strong man that Putin would not have taken on, but more likely because Trump would never have led Zelensky on. He never would have given him hope of joining NATO. And thus, Russia probably would not have had the need to go into the war in the first place. So what is he offering Russia? Well, he wants to waste no time. He wants to get out of the war, and he wants it to get back into the Western Club alliance, into the group bear hug of the G7.
You guys, all you talk about is Russia, and they should be sitting at the table. I think Putin would love to be back.
President Donald Trump's motivation to end the war between Russia and Ukraine stem from several strategic considerations. First, Trump has consistently emphasized an America First policy. He's expressed concerns over the extensive US financial and military support to Ukraine. Close to $200 billion, although he's mentioned $300 billion, has been given to Ukraine. And he has endlessly criticized the flow of American treasure to Ukraine. This reflects his desire to minimize the US involvement in foreign conflicts and reallocate resources domestically within the country. And he's often said this in his campaign trail since 2016. He and his followers see it as a useless war that fits in nowhere in making America great again. They don't see Russia as a threat in their worldview, and he recently also made a statement that he wants to halve the expenditure that the United States, Russia, and China do on nuclear arms as well.
One of the first meetings I want to have is with President Xi of China, President Putin of Russia, and I want to say, let's cut our military budget in half. And we can do that. And I think we'll be able to do it.
Second, Trump has always hated NATO, and he sees it as a waste of time, space, and energy. He sees it as a waste of money. He has endlessly told European nations to stand up for themselves and contribute to their own defense. In fact, NATO was almost redundant and was close to winding up had it not been for the Russia-Ukrainian war in 2022. In November 2019, the French President Emmanuel Macron described NATO as experiencing a brain death. The fact that Trump is now negotiating directly with Putin without NATO, without the Europeans, is humiliating for the bloc in many ways. However, the reality is that Zelensky, as he pointed out himself in an interview, the European security guarantees without the help of the United States were basically worthless. Anyway, Trump believes that his personal rapport with Putin can lead to a much faster, swift resolution. He has stated his intentions to engage in direct talks to stop the millions of deaths taking place in the war with Russia-Ukraine. Now, coming to the real bogeyman in American eyes. By resolving the conflict in Ukraine, Trump aims to pivot US attention and resources towards what he believes is the real threat that the United States should be addressing: China's global influence and development. China hawks, including the international relations realpolitics scholar John Mersheimer, believe that the United States has wasted the past 3 years in undertaking a war with Russia, taking their eyes off the ball when their real enemy was China. When J.D. Vance now makes that statement, it's not in Putin's interest to be the little brother in a coalition with China. He's trying to rile Russia into moving it away from China by demeaning Russia's role in that relationship. And you'll see many statements to that effect from Americans. In fact, it was the American and European policy that drove the Russians into Chinese arms in a significant manner since 2022, and when the Russians were excluded from the Western system. Russia and China have significantly deepened this bilateral relationship across economic, military, and diplomatic fields. Bilateral trade between Russia and China reached a record $244 billion in 2024, with China Russia's largest trading partner. In 2021, this stood at $147 billion. So it's increased by over almost $100 billion. Notably, China has also increased its imports of Russian oil and natural gas. Now, this provided a crucial economic lifeline to Russia's energy sector. However, Russia and China have also signed a massive Siberia 2 project, following on from Siberia 1 project. This is the second pipeline between the two countries that would give China safe access in the long term to Russian natural gas. Russia very significantly moved almost 90% of its trade into non-dollar currencies. Russia has increasingly turned to China's cross-border interbank payment system, SIPS as it's called, to facilitate these international transactions. By the end of 2023, over 90% of the Russian-Chinese bilateral trade was settled in yuan or rubles. And it's shown other countries they can also take this road into conducting non-dollar trades. Chinese companies have tapped into the massive mineral resources that Russia has. For example, a key site for lithium reserves is now being developed as a joint venture with the Russians along with China's MCC International Incorporation. And above all, the two countries now have an extensive military collaboration, which includes conducting joint exercises, drones, and various components that have been sourced from China by the Russians. Both nations have coordinated their positions in international forums, often opposing Western initiatives. Their partnership is now characterized by a strategic alignment to challenge the US dominance and to reshape the global order to promote a multipolar international world. And all of this works to benefit both countries, as China has now secured a powerful European nation that will have its back when times are tough in the future. Donald Trump's aim is now to basically break this strategically aligned friendship between Russia and China, and to do so by bringing Russia back into the Western front, and hence his suggestion to the other partners as well that Russia needs to be allowed to join immediately forums like G7. Whether it's too late and whether they'll be able to achieve this, we will see in the coming months. Thank you for reaching this far and giving me your time. I hope you will share the videos and do leave a comment on how you see this strategy by Donald Trump working out. Have a great day.